Welcome back. Now, the Department of Foreign Affairs is refusing to comment on reports that 2 Irish citizens are being deported by Turkish authorities. The media report has led to speculation that one of the Irish nationals is Dundalk woman Lisa Smith, who, of course, travelled to Syria 3 years ago to join the so-called Islamic State group. Now, joining us with more on that story and everything else this morning is Ellen Gunning, Director of the Irish Academy of Public Relations. Ellen, good to have you.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
Finest. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks.
Good.
Now, tell me what has changed in Lisa Smith's situation that she may be coming home. Imminent arrival, they say.
I think what's changed is the Turkish attitude. Turkey's Prime Minister has said that we are not a hotel for IS, and that really the nations of the world need to start taking their people back. And you can understand it from a Turkish point of view, but they seem to have got really serious in the last while. So they've now removed people who were German, who were Dutch and who were French, as far as I know, and they've said that 2 Irish people will now be deported as well. So the move is really because Turkey has decided they're moving people, they're pushing people back out to their countries of origin.
And just to be clear, there is an element of speculation about this. We're not 100% sure that it is Lisa Smith, are we?
We're not. She's the only person we know of. Herself and her daughter have been the focus of media attention. There is one other man who also holds an Irish passport. But the speculation is that it's herself and her daughter who will be brought back. And in fairness, the Taoiseach has said that they're giving consular assistance to her, and they have sent 2 members of the army over to look after repatriating her back. So I think
so it makes sense.
It's pretty sure that it's her.
How does a repatriation like this work then? Is there a government plane laid on at taxpayers' expense, of course, or is it a commercial flight? How does this tend to work? I
would think the Taoiseach, the last time I saw him speaking last night on the television, he was saying that she's coming from a war zone, so I doubt that you'll have a commercial flight back. It will definitely be a special plane. I think at taxpayers' expense, yes, but she's an Irish citizen. So if we're repatriating her, then whatever the expense is, we bring her back. It will be expensive, but what will be really interesting is to see what happens when she actually comes back.
That's what I was just about to ask you. What do you think? What's going to happen?
Well, the Assistant Garda Commissioner has said that they are investigating her for terrorist crimes. That they think she may have been an influencer in some way. She may have been misbehaving, basically, when she was abroad. So I presume what they will do is they will bring her back and then question her to see, is she a risk to the Irish state? Because the concern here is that she brings some of those IS beliefs back with her. Now, she says she has not been radicalised, but we don't know.
Is there legislation there to prosecute her for what's happened over there, let's say?
I presume there must be if the Garda Commissioner is investigating her, but I don't know.
What do you think, Ellen? Should she be stripped of her citizenship, much like what the UK has been doing quite recently? Should she be sort of left to fend for herself and her child, or is this the right thing to do? Because, as we're saying, it's going to be a huge expense to the Irish taxpayer. The crimes that she's allegedly committed are, you know...
I think if it's somebody who isn't born in Ireland, there's a different question about citizenship. I think if you're born in Ireland, you're an Irish citizen, you should not be stripped of your citizenship. You are born as an Irish citizen, that's it. But I do think if you become an Irish citizen because you married or you went through a naturalisation process or you put money into a major company and you then misbehave in some way, I think the state should have a right to say, I'm sorry, we gave you this as a gift from us and you've abused it, so we'll take it back. But I think if you're born an Irish citizen, you are an Irish citizen and you should come back and be entitled to everything an Irish citizen is entitled to.
So you don't think in this case, then?
Definitely not.
No,
She shouldn't be stripped.
Arrested in Dublin Airport? If you were a gambling woman, would that be what happens?
Probably, I would think, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and I would think that's right, because we're bringing her back into the country, but we need to know, is she a threat to everybody else who lives here? And I think that's fair. Of
course, very interesting stuff. We'll move on. A proposal to end trials of troubled soldiers, or troubled soldiers, excuse me. The Taoiseach Minister for Foreign Affairs, Simon Coveney, has described as worrying a reported plan by the Conservative Party that would prevent British soldiers from being prosecuted for crimes allegedly committed in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And the Conservative Party wants to end what it believes are so-called unfair trials of veterans. So what is Boris Johnson up to here? What do you think is going to happen? Oh, I don't know, but it's a horrific development. It's so wrong. It's so completely wrong. What Boris Johnson seems to be doing, he's saying this is not an amnesty, but that he wants to prevent vexatious
cases being taken against former soldiers,
Yeah.
serving or former soldiers. The agreement is that if you have committed a crime, then irrespective of how long ago you committed that crime, you should be tried for a crime. And this is written into, particularly into the Northern Ireland, the Stormont Agreement,
Yeah.
because it's part of the peace process. Everybody needs closure. Everybody needs to know exactly what happened. But above and beyond that, if you were talking about somebody who had committed the crime or who allegedly had committed the crime of rape or paedophilia, it wouldn't matter that they were 80 years of age and it was 50 years ago. We'd be screaming saying, put the person on trial. A crime has been committed. I don't think there's any difference in this case. I think if you allegedly committed a crime, and if you've got to the stage where somebody can take a case against you, and there's only one soldier F that a case has been taken against, arising from the Bloody Sunday in Derry. So I don't really know that an awful lot of cases have gone through, that there's a big wodge of cases waiting to come through. But I do think if there is a crime that you should answer for, then you should go before the courts. I don't know. Boris is playing to an audience, obviously, who feel that in some way soldiers shouldn't be tried. I don't understand why you shouldn't if you've committed a crime. It's very simple in my mind.
This could just be an election promise, something he hopes will get him over the line. If it is implemented, how should the Irish government react? How strongly should they react? And what can they do? Can they actually stop him?
Oh, they're very powerful. Simon Coveney has said he's concerned. Colm Eastwood from the SDLP has said this is an affront to victims. This should not happen. The only way that Boris apparently can change this is if he changes human rights legislation. But if he does that, the European Court of Human Rights will say, come here now. You can't be doing that. There is legislation which is globally accepted. So I think the Irish case for him not implementing legislation would be very strong because it runs counter to everything that's global. But then there's nothing to say that he won't actually say, well, we've left the EU and we're no longer bound by it and we'll make our own rules anyway, which is what he's been arguing for with Brexit.
Is he all talk on this, do you think? Or does he actually believe in his somewhat deluded mind that he's above the law?
I think he may actually believe that this will win him votes. I think he's in the middle of an election. And I
So
think
he'd
it's
say
about...
anything, Alan, would he?
Well, I think Boris's style has been that he says something and then says a couple of days later, I've changed my mind on that, without saying it quite so blatantly.
Sure.
He's quite fluid in what he stands for.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. We'll move on swiftly. Rent costs spiralling again. According to the latest Daft.ie rental report, rents have hit a new record high for each of the 14 consecutive quarters, piling more pressure on tenants. The average rental cost across the country has now hit 1,400 quid a month. The madness continues. I mean, that's the only way to describe it, isn't it? What's driving the continued rise for people that are watching this story but don't quite understand the background to it?
It's the fact that we don't have enough supply. It's supply and demand.
All right.
There are too many people looking to rent apartments or houses or homes, and there aren't enough actually available to them. When we had the crash, we stopped building, and the unfortunate thing was that we stopped building, and now we're post-crash. I don't know that we're exactly back to where we were, but we're post-crash, and people are they're struggling to find somewhere to live. So the people with more money can afford to pay slightly more, and that keeps pushing rents up, and it makes it much more difficult for anybody to find somewhere to rent. The government really needs to step in with a major building programme. I don't think if you leave it to independent builders that the market is big enough to buy.
Yeah.
I think the government needs to provide rental properties for people.
Sometimes people are pointing the fingers at cuckoo funds. This is sort of a label that is attached with this particular issue. Just remind people what cuckoo funds are, if you can.
I presume cuckoo funds is where it's the cuckoo leaving the nest, and it's where your parents actually provide funds for you. And I can perfectly understand it.
Yeah.
Any parent would give their child a helping hand. I know 40 years ago when I got married, my parents said, so how can we help you? It was probably about 600 quid at the time, but it was huge. It made all the difference to actually getting started. And I think parents are no different today. They do exactly the same thing. So I think cuckoo funds will always be with us.
OK, all right. We'll move on finally to the Australian bushfires. A vast area of Australia's east coast, including Sydney, is bracing itself for one of the nation's worst ever bushfire threats. More than 50 blazes are burning across the state of New South Wales ahead of predicted catastrophic conditions. So the situation seems to be worsening? What's driving it? What's happening today?
It's very serious. I spoke to a colleague last week in Sydney, and I was saying to him, what's the weather like over there? And he said, it's 32 degrees. And I said, oh, gorgeous, because it's so cold over here. And he said, no, it's too hot for spring, and we're only coming into summer. Something will go wrong. And then we hear of these bushfires.
Yeah.
And the danger with the bushfires is that the land has been so dry for so long, they really have become wildfires. The area that has burned so far is the size of Jamaica.
I mean, that's incredible,
huge.
isn't it?
It's huge.
That is absolutely
and the
incredible.
really big fear is that for people who are in mountain areas,
Yeah.
there's so few roads going in and out that if they get it wrong, they'll die. They have no way out.
Ellen, briefing the press this morning, here's what New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons had to say.
As indicated, the weather conditions continue to deteriorate and develop in accordance with today's forecast. Right now, we continue to have 55 fires. We've now got 3 burning at the emergency warning alert level, and 2 of those have just been increased in the last matter of minutes. We've got another 11 still burning at the watch and act alert level.
Ellen, lovely to see you. We'll see you again soon.
Look forward to it.
Thanks very
for
much
having
indeed.
me.
All right, plenty more, of course, coming on Ireland AM. We'll be back after this short break.